Reptilian shapeshifters are behind ISIS, the Federal Reserve and Sesame Street. This is the False Flag Nation podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of the False Flag Nation podcast, where we delve into conspiracy theories, the occult, and all things esoteric. My name is Joe DeMarco, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, Mr. William Revere.
Hey, guys.
This week we got an episode that's going to be a little more practical than normal, because rather than just conspiracy theories, our speculation about what's going on in the world with current events and geopolitical goings-on and occult madness in Hollywood and what have you. This week we're going to be talking about steps you can take to protect yourself in the event of a currency collapse or just a general collapse of society, similar to what you saw in New Orleans following Hurricane Katrina. Because most Americans or most people all over the world in general, are very unprepared for what would happen if the supply chain to their grocery stores or things like that were cut off. They don't have anything stored up. They don't know how to prepare for a disaster, and that's what we're going to be getting into today. So, Will, this is a pretty broad topic. How should we begin to tackle this issue here? What's the best place to start?
There's a list that I have here that I've been researching for a couple weeks now, and this is a general list of some key issues that we need to address when preparing for, which I believe is the coming financial crisis. There's been a lot of speculation that 2016 would be the year that we see another huge dip in the stock market. And we're going to see something similar to what happened in 2007, 2008. There's a lot of people who believe, like Peter Schiff, a lot of fiscal conservatives are pointing out that we're rapidly approaching another bubble in not only the student loans area, but oil prices have dropped significantly due to production and a lot of overseas activities. The housing market is rapidly being inflated again, as well as the Chinese market is in complete free fall as well, due to a lot of government-sponsored construction. You know, you've seen the pictures of the bridges to nowhere and the immaculate cities with no residents in them.
Yeah, I've seen these. I also Vice did a documentary about these ghost cities in China that they were building, presumably just to keep up the facade of the massive growth they had every year. What was it, like 7% a year, something outrageous like that?
Right.
But they're building these enormous cities that can hold probably a couple 100,000 people, and there's only 2,000 people living there.
Yeah,
some of them,
correct.
There's no one living there at all, and they're out in like the frozen middle of nowhere in northern China. Like, it's just, it's absurd.
And for the past couple years, China has been hailed as a great example of what can happen when you properly mix elements of capitalism and a state-controlled economy. And as we're seeing now, that reality is false. So, because we are so interconnected economically, the bad decisions by China will affect the United States as well. And the bad decisions in the United States are going to affect the rest of the world. So what we're predicting here is that there could be, and I believe there will be, some sort of economic downturn, be it a huge drop in the Dow Jones and NASDAQ. in the next 5 months that's going to cause widespread chaos, not only for regular people but the the elite as well. Although they'll be hedging in different ways than us, there's a lot of things that we can do to protect ourselves for what, like again, we believe is going to be an imminent economic collapse. So why don't we just dive right into it? A
So
lot of go ahead.
I don't want to derail whatever train of thought you had going there, but I guess my question at this point would be like, in terms of money, like the U.S. dollar and the world economy, like what do you see happening in the immediate future, like 2016, 2017, and what precautions should people take? Again, if that's something you were going to get into, just go ahead as you were
Yeah,
going to say.
I think we're going to see a decline in the U.S. dollar, especially, excuse me, with oil prices dipping below $40 a barrel. I mean,
Well, it's. I agree that's kind of what should be happening, but if you look at the dollar is very strong right now. The oil has basically collapsed and the dollar has gotten stronger. So something's amiss here. There's some strings being pulled behind the scenes to.
I think that's a facade, and I mean fundamentally, the U.S. dollar is still a fiat currency. It's based off of the trust of the American people, and that's essentially it. There's nothing backing it. I think what's going to end up happening is, the Fed is going to start increasing interest rates, and that will begin a tidal wave throughout the financial markets because interest rates have been held so artificially low for almost 10 years now.
So you think another hike will come? I know they raised it like 0.25%, I think, back in December.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So, we could see that being the beginning of the end, if you will. But like you said, to your point, I think that the government is propping up the stability of the U.S. dollar because, like we've made the case many times here on False Flag Nation, the U.S. dollar is essentially broken, and the only way to fix it is to get rid of all the mal debt, let things happen in a free market, and get the government out of the currency manipulation and get the government out of the Wall Street. Because when you have the bad parts of Wall Street, you have the corruption, you have the basically taxpayer funded bonuses that happened in 2008. There's a lot of bad stuff that happened with Goldman Sachs and Lehman Brothers and all that, but it would have never been able to happen if it wasn't for cooperation with the U.S. government.
Yeah.
And essentially, U.S. taxpayers foot the bill for all these different recoveries that never should have happened.
Like bailouts,
Exactly,
Wall Street,
exactly.
etc.
And the other thing too is that what a lot of people don't talk about is that a 401k was never supposed to happen. 401k was a government program, and what a 401k did was essentially get hundreds and hundreds of thousands, millions of people involved in the stock market when they otherwise would not have been. And
Yeah.
that might seem like a good thing, but what it really did was it gave tax benefits to different companies, and it gave automatic liquid cash each week or bi-weekly into Wall Street for traders to work with.
Yeah.
And it essentially quadrupled or multiplied by 10 the size of Wall Street as we know it. So
yeah, and it's my understanding that it was also just because people were living longer. Like Social Security it worked for a little while, but when lots and lots of people started living past the age where people normally died when Social Security worked, they had to come up with a new system, and that's part of what 401ks and 403bs
Right.
were devised for. And again, that, like you said, that had the effect of injecting a lot more money into the stock market.
Yeah, and you know what could have been used as independent investments, stock purchases made independently, or investment in retail, or investment in rental properties, are now controlled essentially by the government. So you have a scary reality there. But I think we ought to start off with one of the fundamentals for surviving the economic collapse, which will be coming. And the number one thing that people can do, and our listeners can do, is create an emergency fund. Now, this is one of those things that everybody should have to begin with, but it's going to become a necessity during the economic collapse. An emergency fund should ideally have 6 months worth of your expenses in it. That means rent, that means gas, food money, medical supply money, basic living things. You have to look at your monthly budget, and you have to consider, if I lost my job tomorrow, how long would I be able to survive with the money that I have in the bank? And if you automatically get tense and nervous at that question, chances are you don't have enough in your savings account.
Yeah.
So what happened in 2008 was this collapse essentially came out of nowhere for most people. There were not a lot of people who were pointing this out, except for people like Ron Paul and Peter Schiff. While the government had their head in the ground and saying that everything was perfect, essentially within a 3-week period, most people lost anywhere between 20 to 40% of their retirement fund. And that's a general statement, but it's relatively true if you look at the numbers. And a lot of what happened after that was that a lot of companies began to lay off people. And you had this continuous effect of people losing their retirement, people losing their job. And then what happened after losing their job is that people lost their homes because they weren't able to pay their mortgage payment.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest things is to have at least 6 months worth of your mortgage or rent. So if you can set aside that chunk of change, you can essentially rest easy during the incoming financial crisis.
Yeah, I think I think if you did that and nothing else, you'd be worlds ahead of most people. I mean, most people are like one paycheck away from being destitute.
Exactly.
Most people just do not manage their money well at all.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the biggest things, because really, when shit hits the fan, what are you going to need? Other than water and food, it's going to be shelter. So if you can save enough cash and put it to the side and reduce your expenses to create this emergency fund for you and your family, this is going to be the smartest move you can do.
Agreed. So what are the next steps from there, like in order of importance?
I would say the second step is partially related to the first step, but it's to keep physical cash at home. And one of the reasons why this is important is that, if there's a solar flare or some sort of natural disaster that knocks out electricity, or there's just simply a run on banks and the banks decide to declare a midday holiday until the end of the week, are you going to be able to survive without electronic currency? And that's why keeping cash at home is important.
Yeah, you could see something like, the event of bank run, like you just said, or some sort of default on the national debt. You could see like banks just shutting down. They put strict limits on how much cash you can take out, or they won't let you take out cash at all.
Yeah, that's
or
absolutely
they
true.
could just straight up confiscate a percentage of your bank balance. As you saw what happened in Cyprus a few years
Yes.
ago, or they just took 25% of everyone's bank account. They just straight
Yeah.
up stole it. Like they just were able to do that. And for people who think, oh, that's a third world country, that could never happen here, there have been laws passed that allow the government greater access to your 401k. I'll put those links in the show notes. But this stuff is in the works. I'm not necessarily saying it's going to happen for sure, but the infrastructure is being put in place that it could happen. So yeah, if you keep a lot of cash on hand, it prevents them from taking it from you. And that's why I think you're kind of seeing this war on cash too, where they're like trying to eliminate larger bills. They're doing away with the 500 euro note in Europe. There's a movement to get rid of the $100 bill in the US. And the argument, of course, is the only people who carry hundreds around are drug dealers and
Wow.
terrorists and blah, blah, blah. Like,
Terrorists.
yeah. The guy bringing an envelope of cash to buy a car is a terrorist.
Yeah.
Whatever.
That's those are all good points. The other thing too is that having cash on you gives you freedom. Like we said before, even if there is some sort of power collapse, cash is cash.
Yeah.
It's you're gonna have a hard time in the beginning trying to barter with somebody with a 1 ounce bar of silver. Cash is gonna be something that we all know has at least social value. So you'll be able to get your gallon of water and loaf of bread when shit hits the fan. So
yeah, I don't think in the event of if something like that happened, I don't think people would stop accepting cash right away.
exactly.
Just due to social conditioning. People are just gonna be like, well, wait a minute, why would I not accept his cash? I have cash too. That hurts me if I do this to him. So yeah, at least for a little while, I think it would just keep functioning.
So our suggestions here are to keep it at least $300 to $500 cash and smaller notes as well,
Yeah.
5s and 10s, because there might not be the ability to make change like we normally do. So that's our suggestion here at False Flag Nation. Keep at least $500 cash at home at all times. And this is not to be included in your emergency fund. With that being said, the emergency fund, try to keep that spread out throughout different bank accounts. And the reason for that is if there is some sort of takeover of your savings accounts, it might be a little bit more difficult for them to grab 2 or 3 different bank accounts as opposed to one. This goes back to the train of thought of against keeping all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
So it's the same kind of idea. Just try to diversify any type of cash deposits that you have.
Now, where do things like precious metals factor into this, and cryptocurrencies and other things that are like emerging technologies?
Yeah, I mean, again, these are personal decisions, but here at the False Flag Nation, as you are well aware of, we are huge fans of silver particularly. Gold is expensive, and it's only going to go up. So if you have $1,300 to spend on an ounce of gold, go for it. But you're going to see silver going up in price as well. So if you see $1,900 gold, you're probably going to see somewhere between $38 and $45 silver. So if you buy silver now at $17 or $18 an ounce, you're going to be able to protect elements of your wealth. We're not suggesting that you cash out your 401k or you drop all your currency on coins, silver coins and gold coins. That's not the right thing to do, but you should at least keep 10% of your saved assets and keep it in gold or silver, because historically that has been able to hedge off a lot of market declines. So
Yeah, agreed. I have some silver coins. I know you have some of the bars as well.
that's correct.
Do you think it makes a difference what form they're purchased in, or like, do you have a particular source you recommend for that? We're not endorsing anyone. We don't have an affiliate program with them, but I'm just curious how you think the best way to obtain silver is.
In a shit hits the fan scenario, coins are probably better. And the reason for that is people tend to trust um, official government currency. So if you have, Canadian maple 1 ounces or, you know, walking liberty silver dollars from the United States, at least you know in general that is silver. It's easier to manipulate bars, especially when they're not stamped. So if you go to any of these online places and you want to buy bullion, make sure that it comes from like the Swiss Mint or something like that.
Yeah.
And the other thing too, when you're purchasing silver or gold, the easiest way to do that is to go to the coin store around the street or a pawn shop. And the reason for that is A, you can get it immediately, and B, you don't have to pay shipping. So unless you're going to purchase $20,000 worth of silver, you're going to have to pay for shipping. And it's incredibly expensive because you're talking about, 30 pounds worth of silver coming to your house.
It's a lot of silver.
Yeah, and you're going to have to pay for the FedEx tracking and everything. Because I've bought silver through the mail and regretted it immediately. So
yeah, I've bought all my silver at just a coin store around the corner, and I paid cash just because it was more convenient. And plus, if you're paranoid about the government confiscating precious metals like they did during the Great Depression, they outlawed private ownership of gold.
Yep.
If you pay cash, there's no record that you owned the gold. It's just in your house. If you were to swipe a credit card, I don't know if the transaction record would say what you bought, but there's a record that you bought something there. You pay cash, there's nothing.
That's a great point too, because people don't realize that exactly what you said. 1920s into the 30s, private ownership of precious metals, including gold, was completely banned. And you had to turn in your gold and melt it down. It was absurd. I can't believe this happened in the United States. But during that time, this was the beginning of, the after effect of the creation of the Federal Reserve and the IRS. So these types of things were dangerous to the government-controlled economy.
Yeah.
So could it happen again? Absolutely. Will it happen again? Who knows? But it's good to hedge against it. Moving right along here, another smart economic move to make during the financial collapse is reducing your expenses. Now, that just means, do you need a new car? Do you really need that new car? Are you willing to go out and put a down payment?
Nobody needs a new car. No one needs a new something that loses 20% of its value the moment you drive it off the lot.
Exactly. But, it's all about reducing your monthly payments. So, you have the option of getting the new 2016 Corolla or whatever, and it's going to be $300 a month. Do you really need that? Are you that confident in the economy that you're going to take on that extra $300 a month, or plus a down payment, plus insurance increases? It's time to make smarter decisions in terms of your spending, especially when we start getting into 2016, 2017, where we think that this economic collapse is going to begin.
Yeah.
So you want to start preparing yourself to have as little monthly payments as possible, because what's going to happen is a lot of people think, oh, well, if there's a financial collapse, I won't have to make my payments. Well, that's not true. In fact, that's what a lot of people in 2008 thought when they stopped making their mortgage payments, and then they got their homes foreclosed on.
Yeah.
There was no mercy from the government, and there was no mercy from the big banks, so don't expect any in the future.
Yeah, and the original loan you took out is that amount probably isn't going to change just because the value of the thing you bought with that loan went down. Just like
Exactly.
people are still underwater on their mortgages. That that just because your house is worth less now doesn't mean you don't have to pay them back the same amount. So think twice about buying a big house you don't need either.
Right. Um, we're not here talking doom and gloom. If you've positioned yourself to purchase, the interest rates are pretty good right now.
That's true.
Um, you know, it's a personal choice. We suggest purchasing something with a possible rental area in it as well, because if you do lose your job, you want to be able to have that income to pay off your mortgage. It's extremely important
Yeah.
that people have backup plans.
Now, what are your thoughts on like buying a bug out location, like a plot of land or a house somewhere that's like in an isolated area where you could, in theory, wait out a disaster?
If you have the financial means to do that, absolutely. So if you live in the tri-state area, um, you know, there's parts of New Jersey, there's parts of New York, there's parts of Connecticut that are rural in one sense or another, but they're not really out there. If you want to get away from the cities, you're probably going to want to go to Pennsylvania. That's probably the closest, or upstate New York. But if which is actually kind of affordable. There's plots of land in upstate New York and Pennsylvania, which is relatively cheap.
Yeah.
Like we said, if you have the means to do that, absolutely. You
Yeah,
want to you want to get away from the cities as quickly as possible when something like this happens.
most of the country would be cheaper than those three states. But I've heard a good rule of thumb is to have your location one full gas tank away from a major population center. So that
Yeah,
way you're just you're far enough removed that you have your food stores and your maybe you started a garden or something, and no, you're not going to have like wandering bands of hungry natives loot your land. You're not going to
exactly.
be on the roof with a shotgun fending off the Dawn of the Dead type scenario.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. If you could get somewhere uh, 300 or 400 miles away, that's a good thing. Um, you know, we're located closer to cities, which is nerve wracking, but if you can get away, that's ideal. And for parts of the country that are listening that are already isolated, then you got nothing to worry about essentially.
Yeah.
But I think you brought up a great point too, and we're going to get into this shortly, but independence with your food supply. Uh, a lot of things that I've noticed, researching past economic collapses and all over the world, is that food stores, usually like Stop and Shop, Big Y, all those things, they have about 8 hours worth of food in there when shit hits the fan. So you're talking about not only a run on banks, but a run on grocery stores as well.
That's true. Like you just see like when a minor like a event like a tropical storm, not even a hurricane, but just a
Right.
tropical storm comes into your area and everyone runs to the store and buys milk and bread, which for some reason strikes them as the smartest thing to buy when a storm is coming. But
Yeah.
like yeah, it's you go to a store like that day and the shelves will be clear.
Yeah.
Like within a few hours. So what's going to happen when the supply chain of food to the grocery stores uh, falls apart and they're not being replenished? Like how long would people behave until they start freaking out and rioting and looting places?
As we've seen in the past, Katrina is a great example. It could everything could change in a matter of hours.
Yeah.
So if people get wise to the idea that there's no more food in the grocery stores, um, you could see chaos within a day. So one of the things that we're stressing here is not only should you have a garden, but it should be a necessity. Um, but I'm going to get back to that in a second. what you guys can do in the city, and if you don't have property to grow your own resources, you need to start stockpiling canned goods and water. And some of the best things you can have is, go to the store, look for the deals, look for the buy one get one free, and every time you go to the store, pick up 2 or 3 cans, and you'd be surprised at how quickly it adds up. I've done this myself, and I think I have a good month supply of food, and just canned foods. So that's ideally what you should have. I'm trying to push for 3 months supply, but obviously I'm working on it currently. But canned goods, canned vegetables, tuna fish, um, that kind of stuff, carbohydrates, of course, dried meats, beef jerky, that kind of stuff, are all going to be essential, as well as water and Gatorade, stuff like that. So the more of that packaged canned stuff that you can purchase, the better.
Yeah. And you want like non-perishable foods, like you said, canned goods, but other things like rice and dried beans, lentils, things like that are rich in protein and carbs that would keep you on your feet and are easy to prepare.
Exactly.
But rice is practically free. Like you buy a 5 pound bag of rice for like $3, that could feed a family for a few weeks.
Yeah, exactly. Um, you want to have obviously clean water as well, and means to boil that rice as well. So uh, keep pots and pans and other cooking utensils, as well as a propane grill. That's one of the most important things you can buy. Those little camping stoves with the smaller propane tanks are
Yep.
essential for surviving an economic collapse, especially if you go into 2 or 3 weeks worth of the grid being shut down. So that means no access to electricity. That means no access to natural gas and other oil and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to think, what would you do, and how would you survive, and how would you live your normal daily life without the power being on? And if you don't have a solution to that, you're probably not in a good position.
What are some other steps people should take?
Um, Obviously, we talked about it a little bit, but medical supplies are absolutely necessary. So if this means just a very, very basic level, picking up an extra pair of glasses at Walmart that you can get relatively cheap, um, picking up extra contact solution contacts, those are things you don't think about until they're gone. So if you break your glasses and you're in the middle of making your exodus to your bug out area, you essentially as good as dead. If you can't drive your car, you can't see anything, you can't communicate effectively.
Yeah.
That's number one for the medical supplies. Get any requirements that you have. So if you have glasses, get 2 extra pairs. If you are on medication, heart medication, cholesterol, stuff like that, you want to be able to stock up for at least a few weeks. The worst thing that could happen is you going through either withdrawals or negative side effects of not having your required medication. So if that means telling the doctor that you lost your bottle or it got destroyed or something like that, pick up at least 2 or 3 more refills of your required medication. I think that's always a good idea, as well as getting Tylenol, Tums, Pepto-Bismol, all that kind of stuff stockpiled um, in your supplies as well, because those things are going to be ripped off the shelves as quickly as food.
Yeah.
Um, Other things to have in the medical supply area are obviously a first aid kit. This is something that we've talked about in the past, but having a general first aid kit with alcohol pads, with bandages, with scissors, stuff like that could really save the day in a minor medical emergency. So anything that you can have to prepare yourself in that respect is going to be fantastic. If that means picking up, a $15 basic first aid kit at the store, then go for it. This is a necessity for surviving the economic collapse.
Absolutely. No. Are there any what's a quick thing someone can put into action today to prepare for something like this? Like they can just grab a quick little backpack at Walmart. Obviously, you'd prefer to have a better backpack, like a hiking one. But what if someone needed to make a bug out bag right now? What would they throw in it? And what do you think if they lived in a major urban area? What do you think they should do?
A quick city bug out bag would have at least 3 days worth of food supplies. It would have 2 liters of water, preferably in, get the high electrolyte water like Smart Water, something like that. You're going to want to have at least $150 in cash in the bag. And again, small denominations. I would have 25 feet of boat rope, which is the bright yellow, strong rope. Don't ask me why, but I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
Yeah, I've seen some people use utility rope too.
Exactly. Some sort of knife. You can pick up a nice flip blade, a Gerber, something like that, in between $20 and $25. You need some sort of knife, not only for personal defense, but for basic survival. You don't know what kind of situation you're going to be in, and having a knife is always a good thing. I also have some sort of blanket or sheet, something that you can not only wrap around yourself, but you could signal for help, and you could also camouflage yourself with. So you could have some sort of light blanket. I also have a pair of pants in my bug out bag, a pair of clean socks, wool socks. I also have a couple pieces of silver, because you never know how long you're going to be out there.
Yeah.
And if you grab your bag, that's all you have with you. In states where it's legal, and I say that with quotation marks, you're going to want to have your handgun and ammunition in this bag as well, if not on your belt. If shit hits a fan, the last thing you're going to be worrying about is local and state laws. So
Yeah.
if you have a handgun, you need to be able to keep ammunition in your bug out bag as well as your pistol. It's going to be a little bit harder to keep a rifle in a bug out bag, but that's why we suggest that everybody should have a handgun of sorts. The other thing too is some high sugar snacks as well, just to keep the energy going. There's a lot of natural snacks like the Kind bars, Cliff bars, that kind of thing, where you can eat it and you're good for the next 2 or 3 hours. Those are important. We also suggest that you keep a credit card in a Ziploc bag, and one preferably that you don't use normally. This was going to be for emergency purchases. So you grab this, you get in your car, and you run. This is how you pay for gas if the grid hasn't shut down completely. You want to keep your license, multiple forms of ID, and preferably your passport, because you don't know if you're going to have to get to Mexico or Canada. So for our U.S. audience living in areas closer to the border, you might be in a position where it's safer in one of those other countries. So always keep your passport with you.
Yeah, and that raises the issue of maybe if it's the crisis is specific to one country, maybe just getting out of the country altogether until it blows over.
Right.
But getting back to the more survival aspect, I could see, obviously hang on to your cell phone. Again, if the grid hasn't shut down yet, that's a good thing to have. It's a smartphone. You can keep up with what's happening on the news. Bring a charger and then a compass and then one of those little crank radios.
Yes,
hand-powered radios, because that if you can listen to broadcasts by the emergency management association. They can keep you apprised of what's going on and what you should do next. Don't assume FEMA's going to take care of you because of the stellar job they did following Katrina, but they will probably at least be sending some communications out. So you want to be able to hear what should be going on. Again, this is assuming it's not an EMP attack, in which case there won't be any electricity at all. But it's, again, better to have it and not need it than the other way around.
Exactly. Yeah, those are all smart things. Obviously, a cell phone isn't going to last very long if the grid goes down, and it won't work at all if the grid goes down.
Yeah.
But like you said, a radio is going to be something that becomes essential, like a crank radio. And obviously that would be limited to grid abilities as well. If the power grids go down, a lot of these radio stations and radios aren't going to be able to work, so it might be just people-to-people communications on open airways.
Yeah.
But that's a great thing too. The other thing too is you want to come up with a plan. So if you and your family are in basic communication with each other, if there was a nuclear attack on New York, is there a place that you guys would meet? Is there would you try to get to Rhode Island or something like that? Would you try to get to Ohio? Is there a final destination? Is there a one-day point where people would meet up if you didn't have the means to communicate? It goes back to like the fire drill plan with your family when you were little. Do you have a plan that everybody knows if something terrible happens and you can react to immediately? So if that means that if a dirty bomb went off in New York City, would your family know to meet in North Carolina somewhere? No questions asked, that's what you do. Having a basic plan like that is a great thing for just staying in communication and having the confidence to overcome whatever is happening in the world at that point.
Yeah, it seems like a good thing to develop a network in advance of people you could count on and people that you'd help out. Just to know that you wouldn't be entirely alone. It wouldn't be all against all. You'd have a tribe set up in advance of something like this happening.
Absolutely. And, friends and family are going to be key to surviving this type of situation. If you have friends in different states that are safer, quote unquote, so we're talking, Midland, United States, try to be in communication with them. Say, look, if they're on board with the whole mindset that we are, could we come stay with you? These are the questions you need to start asking. You need to have plans for travel as well. Know what routes are going to be closed more likely than others. Know alternate routes. These are all basic things that a lot of people don't think about. And obviously keeping a map with you is going to be absolutely necessary as well, because you're not going to have your Google Maps anymore when shit hits the fan. So these are a lot of things to remember, but we're going to put a list up underneath the video on the website, and we're going to link to a couple other sources that we think are good as well. And this is a topic that's extremely relevant. It covers natural disaster, it covers economic collapse, but these are all realities in the United States and the world today. So you might as well be prepared.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like to not at least brush up on a very basic level. This stuff it's kind of like not having health insurance. It's just stupid and irresponsible. You should have a basic understanding of what it takes to survive in some sort of contingency plan in place for if shit goes south, and you should have a plan B for that plan as well.
Right.
This is something you're not going to develop it overnight, but it's just take an hour a week, give it some thought, and strategize, and get your friends together, and you could probably come up with a solid course of action a lot quicker than you think.
I agree with that as well. So I think we're almost at at the time right now. So,
Yeah.
are there any final thoughts that you have? Any questions that I can try to answer?
I think we've covered this pretty comprehensively. I think we've given you the real meat and potatoes of what people should be thinking about with regards to preparing for a disaster, whether it's a financial disaster or a natural disaster or man-made pandemics. The same general precautions apply. You want to protect your finances. You want to protect your physical health. You want to get your shelter and your food and water requirements met, and make sure all that stuff is in place. And then from there, you want to get to a safer location. And that's the basic philosophy behind all these different plans you will develop and come across while you're researching this.
That's correct. Absolutely. And like we said before, we're not doomsdayers. We're just people who want to be prepared.
Yeah,
you know?
I'm not. Yeah, we're not saying go out and live off the grid with the Unabomber. Keep living your normal lives and pursuing your goals and stuff. But just have a plan in case that doesn't work. In case you have to temporarily delay that in the event of an emergency, and you'll be ahead of 99% of the population. And I wish that was an exaggeration, but it's not.
Yeah, that is correct.
Yeah. Well, like you said, I think we're just about out of time here. For show notes and more, go to www.falseflagnation.com. We'll have links to the sources for this episode and other sites and videos you should check out to educate yourself on this topic. Follow us on Facebook and on Twitter at falseflagnation. And that is all for this week. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe on iTunes. I knew I was forgetting something, but don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating, and you will get our new podcasts automatically downloaded to you every week. So that is all for this week. This is Joe DeMarco signing off. Mr. Revere.
Adios, folks. Have a great week.
Thanks a lot for tuning in, folks. We'll see you next week.